There comes a moment in life when you get tired. Not physically tired, but mentally tired. Tired of explaining your decisions, tired of defending your boundaries, tired of justifying why you feel the way you feel. And one day you stop. You stop explaining yourself. And when you do, something powerful begins to happen. Most people think explaining yourself is a sign of maturity. And sometimes it is. Healthy communication is important. But there's a difference between communicating and constantly defending your existence. When you feel the need to explain every choice, every no, every silence, every change, it usually means you're afraid of being misunderstood, or worse, rejected. From a psychological point of view, over-explaining often comes from a deep need for approval. Humans are wired for belonging. According to social psychology, we fear exclusion because historically, being rejected from a group meant danger. So we try to make everyone understand us. We try to make everyone comfortable with us, even if it costs our own peace. But here's what happens when you stop explaining yourself. First, people get uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. The ones who benefited from your explanations will feel the shift immediately. When you used to explain, they felt in control. They could question you, challenge you, pressure you. But when you stop explaining, you remove their access to your internal world, and that unsettles them. Silence creates mystery, and mystery creates power. When you simply say, "This is what I decided," without a long paragraph attached to it, people don't know how to respond. They may call you cold. They may say you've changed. They might even accuse you of being selfish. But what's really happening is this. They are adjusting to the new version of you, the one who no longer seeks permission to exist. Second, your confidence grows quietly. Every time you resist the urge to over-explain, you send a message to your brain. I trust myself. Self-trust is one of the strongest foundations of confidence. You don't build it by convincing others. You build it by standing firm in your own decisions. Psychologically, this shifts your identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who needs validation, you begin to see yourself as someone who has authority over their own life. And the brain loves consistency. The more you act like a person who trusts themselves, the more your mind accepts that identity. Third, your relationships change. Some relationships will fade, and that's okay. The people who only stayed because you were easy to question, easy to guilt, easy to manipulate, they will feel less connected to you, not because you became worse, but because you became stronger. Healthy relationships, however, become deeper. When you stop explaining yourself excessively, the right people don't demand more. They respect your choices. They may ask questions, but not to challenge your worth, only to understand. That's the difference. Another thing that happens is this. You save emotional energy. Over-explaining is exhausting. You replay conversations in your head. You wonder if you said too much or too little. You craft long messages trying to make sure nobody misinterprets you. That constant mental effort drains you. When you stop explaining unnecessarily, your mind becomes quieter. You make a decision. You communicate it clearly. And you move on. No long debates. No emotional essays. Just clarity. And clarity is powerful. There is also a shift in how people perceive you. In psychology, there is something called the confidence bias. People tend to assume that those who speak with certainty know what they're doing. When you state your decision calmly and briefly, it signals certainty. Even if you feel nervous inside, your composed delivery changes how others treat you. Have you noticed how people rarely question someone who speaks calmly and firmly? It's not aggression. It's not arrogance. It's presence. When you stop explaining yourself, you start embodying presence. Presence is the ability to stand in your truth without over-defending it. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't panic when someone looks confused. You don't scramble to soften your boundaries. You simply stay grounded. Another powerful change is emotional control. Over-explaining often happens when emotions are high. You feel misunderstood, so you talk more. You feel judged, so you defend more. But when you learn to pause instead of over-explain, you strengthen emotional regulation. You respond instead of react. Emotional regulation is one of the clearest signs of mental strength. It means you don't let someone else's confusion control your behavior. And here's something deeper. When you stop explaining yourself, you force people to reveal their intentions. If someone genuinely cares, they will try to understand you respectfully. If someone only wanted control, they will push harder, criticize more, or attempt to provoke you. Your silence becomes a filter. It exposes character. There is also a freedom that comes with it. You no longer feel the need to make your life make sense to everyone. Not everyone will understand your growth. Not everyone will understand your boundaries. Not everyone will understand why you walked away. And that's okay. Maturity is realizing that being understood by everyone is not required for living peacefully. You start making decisions based on alignment, not approval. And here's the most interesting part. When you stop explaining yourself, people often start respecting you more. Not immediately. Sometimes they resist at first. But over time, consistency builds reputation. When people see that you don't bend under pressure, they adjust their behavior. They stop pushing certain limits. They think twice before crossing boundaries. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate, and by what you no longer explain. This doesn't mean you become silent in every situation. Communication is still important. But the difference is intention. You explain to connect, not to convince. You speak to clarify, not to beg for understanding. There's a calm strength in that. And you'll notice something else. Your anxiety decreases. When you stop obsessing over how everyone perceives you, your mind has more space. You stop rehearsing conversations that haven't even happened. You stop trying to predict reactions. You accept that reactions belong to other people. That level of detachment is peaceful. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you understand what is within your control and what isn't. When you stop explaining yourself, you also stop shrinking yourself. Sometimes we over-explain because we're trying to soften the impact of our boundaries. We add extra details so people won't feel hurt. We minimize our needs so we won't look demanding. But the truth is, healthy boundaries don't require a long speech. No is a complete sentence. I'm not available is enough. This doesn't work for me is valid. The people meant to stay will adjust. The ones who leave were attached to your compliance, not your authenticity. And authenticity always feels lighter. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. You may feel guilty. You may feel like you're being rude. That's normal, especially if you've spent years being the understanding one or the over-explainer. Change feels strange before it feels natural. But if you stay consistent, something shifts internally. You start feeling steady, grounded, calm. You begin to realize that your life becomes simpler when you don't argue with every misunderstanding. Sometimes silence is not weakness. It is discipline. Sometimes brevity is not coldness. It is clarity. And sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is standing by your choice without defending it. When you stop explaining yourself, you don't lose your voice. You refine it. You speak less, but you mean more. You say fewer words, but they carry more weight. And in that space, between fewer words and stronger presence, you find peace. Because at the end of the day, the people who truly value you don't need a constant explanation. They need honesty. They need consistency. They need the real you. And the real you doesn't need permission to exist. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop asking for approval. And that's when your power quietly begins.